Start with contracting sprites. Chapter 281, Ghost City Core. The Nightmare Terror's true body was hidden in the black mist, which lingered over the whole square. As the rich shadow energy materialized, wisps of black smoke drifted through the cold wind, like a group of demons dancing. The 5 ghost element sprites aren't weak, but since thunder element counters ghost element sprites, he still has a chance. The sprite trainer from Dragon Nation analyzed. That thunder roaring has mastered the fixed armament and some secret manual that can strengthen its unique skills. It's already pretty good for an extraordinary level sprite. As long as his other sprites aren't too weak, he has a chance to pass. In the first 8 rounds, Thunder Roaring had defeated enemies, broken doors, and defended against strong attacks. Witnessing such a performance, everyone couldn't help but praise it. However, someone also said weakly, "But, isn't that student's ace sprite Butterfly Fairy?" Butterfly Fairy had insta-killed the extraordinary Tyrant Bear previously. How can that be called insta-kill? Besides, that Tyrant Bear was weak to begin with. It was defeated in the first stage. I also think that Thunder Bear is very strong. I'm just worried that it consumed a lot of energy in the previous stages. I don't know if it can handle more. There was no time limit for the 9th stage. There was only a battle preparation countdown timer on the stone tablet, ticking away. The few Nightmare Terrors didn't attack, and the sprites in Su House team were also waiting for orders on the spot. Big Fat Bear pricked up its ears and heard everyone's evaluation of it outside. It revealed a silly smile and rubbed its head, its helmet. It was a little embarrassed. After all, this bear was very outstanding to begin with. Of course, it goes without saying that Big Sister was still stronger. Big Fat Bear only became so outstanding thanks to Big Sister's, and Sprite Trainer's nurturing. It made a few poses before it caught a glimpse of the Dazed Crow sharpening its blade as it happened to look over. Dazed Crow's burning gaze and the thunder arcs shooting out from underneath Big Fat Bear's helmet seemed to have collided in the air, making the atmosphere very tense. Howl, howl, howl. Squawk. The 2 sprites turned their heads and stared at the 5 Nightmare Terrors. Threads of thunder arcs burst out of the Big Fat Bear's body, and it had already begun to accumulate power. Rings of red light also started to circulate on the Dazed Crow's body. It had entered the flaming feather form. Once the countdown reaches 0, the 2 battle generals would immediately rush out. Nay. The dumb unicorn, breathing out breaths of cold air, shook its head in disdain as it looked at the bear and the crow competing for attention. I don't need to do this. The status of the mount was the most stable. Thud. The countdown reached 0. 3 of the 5 extraordinary Nightmare Terrors flashed into the ground, while the other 2 suddenly stirred up wisps of black smoke around them, stirring up real cold wind. Unique skill, Shadow Wind. In an instant, black wind covered the whole square. The bright night spirit, which was being blown by the cold wind, roared continuously. Its eyes became misty for a moment, and a few strands of black appeared in its blazing white hair as it gradually lost control of itself. The most terrifying thing about the Shadow Wind is that it has a spiritual influence. Bai Xiaoming, who came from a sprite trainer family and was also a student of a heavenly king, had very rich experience and knowledge. He analyzed, extraordinary level sprites won't fall for it immediately, but over time, the influence of the cold wind will increase. This is the most unreasonable thing about ghost element sprites. That Butterfly Fairy might have been able to easily spot the 100 ghost element sprites, but those were only entry-level sprites. Elite-level ghost element sprites were on a completely different level. Bai Xiaoming's eyes stared fixedly, but the cold wind blocked everything. Even with the vision of his sprite, he still couldn't see anything. One could only vaguely see blue-purple lightning sparks, and the bursting incandescent red flames. Many foreign sprite trainers had complicated expressions. On the one hand, they hoped that the Dragon Nation citizen could pass the stage so that it could bring them detailed information. On the other hand, they also didn't want to see the sprite trainers of their own country being left far behind. It was as if two thoughts were fighting in their mind. One said, "Go, go, go, go." The other said, "I'm sure he'll lose this stage." Enveloped by the cold wind, Su Hao couldn't see or hear the discussions of the audience outside. He was like a battlefield general as he sat on the water pylon. It appeared mighty and domineering so long as it remained quiet. Su Hao had a calm gaze as he glanced at his surroundings. The bright night spirit also floated beside him. On its forehead was a white pearl the size of a table tennis ball. The power it exuded made it immune to the mental influence of the yin wind. It was Butterfly's spiritual pearl. With just one pearl, one would have no worries. Apart from the bright night spirit, the cold wind also had little influence on Dumb Unicorn due to its high-level bloodline. Of course, the cold wind wasn't able to affect Butterfly. The dazed crow had long mastered its tenacious willpower after practicing slashing thousands of times a day. The cold wind barely influenced it. As for Big Fat Bear, it might have moderate strength but it had poor mental resistance and extremely weak willpower. However, it was wearing the full set of Thunder God battle armor. The battle armor produced by the interface was a comprehensive defense that had no blind spots. The moment the cold wind blew, it was annihilated by the energy of the battle armor. The threads of mental power couldn't penetrate it either. A stream of dazzling blue-purple light broke through the endless black smoke and hit a nightmare terror, destroying the black mist completely, but leaving nothing behind. It was a fake body. On the other side, the dazed crow wasn't going to back down either. It transformed two wings into blades and instantly made more than 10 slashes. The shadow energy balls that had come from all directions were completely destroyed by it. The huge ghost claw formed by the shadow energy was also easily slashed apart by it. After blocking the attack, the dazed crow quickly threw out another super flaming blade without any hesitation. A blazing red blade light instantly appeared in front of a certain nightmare terror that had just revealed itself and swallowed it whole. It slipped away again. Su Hao finally understood how others felt when they faced Butterfly, spending so much effort just to defeat an illusion. Ghost element sprites, especially sprites like nightmare terrors, were born to be experts in illusions. He looked at Butterfly. "Did you find it?" Gurgle. Butterfly could capture the location of the nightmare terrors, but nightmare terrors also had a really high resistance to illusions. Butterfly signaled the location to Dazed Crow and Big Fat Bear. Dazed Crow might have a faster reaction time, but Big Fat Bear still had an advantage against the nightmare terrors. However, it could be said that Dazed Crow was not at all dazed during battles. Su Hao frowned and started to think. He could only come up with 3 different plans. The first is to plant illusions on them one by one, but it will take a long time and will consume a lot of Butterfly's energy. The second is for the Dazed Crow to use Sun Stance. The whole square is only so big. With its battle literacy, as long as it spots the right position, it can kill a nightmare terror with a set of explosive attacks, but the consumption will also be substantial and will cause a big commotion. The third is to let the dumb unicorn spit out water. As long as it is able to turn the surroundings into a vast ocean and taking advantage of the characteristics of water and electricity, it can give them a fatal blow the moment the nightmare terror appears. But it's not a flawless plan either. Su Hao thought for a while and chose the 4th plan. He started to give orders. Instantly, Dazed Crow let out a cry and flew up high. Dumb Unicorn gathered a large amount of water elements and turned into a blue stream of water, spinning continuously like a vortex. The Big Fat Bear also retreated to the center of the vortex step by step and stood right in front of the dumb unicorn. The surging waves hit, making rumbling sounds. It gradually became stronger and soon hit the enchantment at the edge of the square. What is he doing? The waves had also swallowed up some of the cold wind. Everyone looked as the unfamiliar sprite rose wave after wave. But the waves had little effect on the nightmare terror. From time to time, black light beams, shadow energy balls, or ghost claws would be sent flying. Thunder roaring dodged left and right, but it was still blasted back. Dazzling, blinding white light erupted, piercing through the dark environment. In front of them was a vast expanse of white, as if a strong flashlight shone on their faces in the darkness. Many sprite trainers instinctively closed their eyes, tears flowing uncontrollably. Unique skill, extreme day. Even when the surrounding sprites kept their eyes open, they could only see a vast expanse of white. In the dazzling white light, Butterfly made a soft cry. Its emerald green antennae stood up, and its mental power completely erupted on the few nightmare terrors that it had already captured. The dispersion of the energy began to leave many marks of illusion on the bodies of the nightmare terrors. Butterfly's explosion couldn't deal much damage to the nightmare terrors, but it was able to force them out of the ground and expose them to the dazzling white light. There was no black shadow where the light of day enveloped. For a moment, there was nowhere left for the nightmare terrors to hide. And at this exact moment, pitter-patter, howl 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 howl. The eruption of lightning wasn't very eye-catching under the extreme daytime, but the thunder arcs borrowed the power of water and spread rapidly, blasting out countless water pillars and intensified the destructive lightning surrounding the water pillars. Unique skill, Thunder Prison. The power of the Thunder Prison after being transmitted weakened a little, but it still managed to instantly blast onto the three nightmare terrors before they had a chance to escape. The blue-purple thunderbolt's impact even scattered most of the black mist on their bodies. It was their real bodies. With the enhancement of the powerful lightning and the markings on their bodies, one hit was enough to heavily injure the three nightmare terrors, which were all strong even for extraordinary levels. The most miserable one only had a few wisps of black smoke left around its body. It was almost naked. The remaining two nightmare terrors escaped quickly after. They flew into the air and were only hit by a few more little thunder arcs. They were just about to escape when suddenly a blazing red light erupted. Some of it even showed through despite all of the blinding white light. What brilliant power! Blazing sun descent. Fire crow saber slash. Extreme flames fused into a line, piercing through the first nightmare terror. Without even turning its head, the dazed crow pulled out its wings and slashed again, slashing towards another nightmare terror that was slightly further away. However, it quickly reacted and split into three, escaping into three directions. The scarlet saber light only cut into one of them. The other two gradually faded as they tried to escape again. Thud. The illusionary figure solidified again, and two white pearls smashed onto their bodies. One of the three bodies immediately disappeared. The black mist around the main body exploded, and the figure froze. In the next moment, it was enveloped by the blazing sun. At this point, only the sound of blade light slicing through the air and nightmare terror's tragic cries could be heard. After an unknown amount of time, when the white light dissipated, everyone outside the arena could only see. A certain someone was still sitting on the back of his mount. There were only a few water stains left in the wave vortex. It had already turned into pure water elements and dissipated. The other sprites were still the same. They weren't injured, and they didn't seem to move either. However, they also saw wisps of black smoke dissipating. The only nightmare terror in their vision gradually shrunk and eventually disappeared. Only a piece of cloth remained as it floated down and was grabbed by the person inside the square. Ding! Intelligence points +1. Su Hao lowered his head and looked at his hand. It was clearly an illusion, but when he held it in his hand, it felt like a real cloth. He was stunned. Was it really possible for monsters to drop loot? He gave one of the cloth pieces to Butterfly for research, and put the remaining 4 pieces into his backpack. With some anticipation, he looked towards the center of the square. But the stone platform didn't rise, only light beams shot out from the huge stone tablet, shining at every sprite. On the interface, Su Hao could see that the spiritual force of Butterfly and the others kept jumping up by digits of tens and hundreds. The one with the highest increase was Bright Night Spirit. Although it was mostly there for emotional support, it had also managed to contribute. It was directly raised to elite level, almost reaching the ceiling limit of its current form. But seeing that there weren't any special rewards, Su Hao was ultimately a little disappointed. I wonder what's in the 10th stage. He raised his head and looked at the stone tablet in the middle. The symbols on it appeared one by one. After passing the initial screening, you are eligible to enter the Ghost Gate Hall. At the same time the symbol appeared, an invisible force enveloped his body. It felt a little familiar. Wait. Wait. The world spun around him. Su Hao's legs felt a little weak as he stepped on a stone slab. Butterfly, Dumb Unicorn, and the others also appeared around him, but they weren't in the square anymore. Gurgle. Butterfly's mental perception immediately spread out to scan if there was any danger around. Su Hao opened the interface at once to take a look. It's only a few hundred meters away from the square, but it's underground. What he saw was a vast underground space with 4 huge black stone pillars supporting the surroundings. This place was empty and quiet, but what was magical was that there was still some light here, and he could see an environment dozens of meters around him. This is Ghost Gate Hall? It doesn't look like it. On the other hand, the city itself looked like a place that specialized in nurturing ghost element sprites. He maintained his vigilance and circled the entire space. He didn't discover anything, only a passage right ahead. Let's see if we can pass through the wall. Ghost element sprites could pass through walls, but in his team, Butterfly and Bright Night Spirit could also do the same. Immediately, the butterfly created a few illusionary butterflies. They flapped their wings and flew towards the wall. Buzz! A halo appeared, and the few illusionary butterflies bounced back. There's a barrier. The result wasn't out of Su Hao's expectations. This place should be the core area of Ghost City. The defense mechanism still functions, and the place I'm currently at can be seen as a one-way entrance. He thought about it. If the Ghost Gate Hall was a place to nurture talents, the danger shouldn't be too great. Besides, he had no choice. Thud. 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 It was quiet in the underground passage. Fortunately, he had a few sprites around, bringing him a little warmth. In front of the team was the professional meat shield Big Fat Bear. It moved forward quickly, its 3-meter-tall body was contrasted with its weak and pitiful temperament. Before long, another wide space appeared in front of him, extending 3 different passageways. He had already passed similar forks 3 times and had seen some dilapidated rooms. There were almost no valuable items inside. The treasure vault with precious materials and rewards was nowhere to be found. Sculptures. In front, at the position against the wall, sculptures were arranged in a triangular formation. Although it was very dilapidated, one could still tell that it looked like a sprite. The one on the left should be a nightmare terror, a relatively common type of ghost element sprite. The second, bird head, human body, is a guhuo bird. Both were ghost element sprites in their final form. He then identified which sprites the other sculptures belonged to. There was a 100-eyed demon with a set of eyeballs, a talisman drawing ghost covered in yellow talismans, and a cabinet university scholar wearing a long robe. But unlike the one he had seen before, he saw a portion of the ghost element sprites recorded in the Union here. Maybe these are the ones that Ghost City is best at cultivating? Maybe it's meant for sprite trainers with those sprites. What's that in the middle? The head of the statue was wearing a crown, and its robes fluttered in the wind. He didn't find the corresponding sprite in his mind. It might be a form that the Union had yet to discover, which was also normal. Now, he was considering which direction to go. Tap, tap, tap. Footsteps suddenly came from the right passage. Chapter 282, The Black Stone That Breeds Mysterious Sprites. In the dark and silent environment, footsteps came from afar, making Su Hao's body instinctively tense up. But a moment later, gurgle. Could it be another explorer? He relaxed a little and remained on guard as he looked towards the right passage. The footsteps became louder and louder. A giant-shaped sprite, 4 to 5 meters tall and translucent, made of wind and gas, appeared in his vision. Wind Giant Spirit. The Wind Giant looked over with a wary expression, but it quickly relaxed again. Seeing this, Su Hao knew that the sprite trainer of the Wind Giant Spirit recognized him. Just several seconds ago, Su Hao had also recognized the other party. Su Hao looked at the interface again. On the empty map, apart from the Wind Giant Spirit, there were only a few other sprites at a distance away from him. They were all wind element. Storm God Hound, Mist Feather Swallow, Flying Python. The icons on the interface moved quickly. Not long after, a big white dog carrying a long black-haired girl ran out of the right passage. Behind the big dog was a sprite that looked like a swallow and a large black snake with a pair of small wings. One moved with its paws, another flew, and another slithered inaudibly on the ground. Howl! Only the big white dog that rushed out greeted them warmly. Ever since it had a taste of how wonderful Su Hao's battle tactics were, the dog couldn't stop himself from being friendly. Howl! The big white dog that came up to Su Hao was very friendly. Su Hao couldn't help but reach out and pet it. It was only until he had finished petting did he awkwardly look at Lan Ching, who was getting off the Storm God Hound. Seeing that the other party didn't react, he couldn't help but compare the difference between petting a dog and petting a bear. Howl! Big Fat Bear suddenly sensed danger and let out a roar. The big white dog also roared, Howl! The two sprites were stunned. They looked at each other and saw doubt in each other's eyes. Su Hao ignored the silly sprites. In the dark environment, he looked at Lan Ching, who had an ethereal aura and looked especially like a lady from hell. He asked, You came here after completing the stage? Yes. There's probably several of those squares in the ancient city. Lan Ching's sprites were all extraordinary level. Within the exploration team, she was considered to be very comprehensive and all-rounded, and was at most only slightly inferior to Su Hao himself. However, she lacked Butterfly's illusionary and investigative skills. A team without investigative abilities was incomplete when it came to exploring unknown territories. As expected, Su Hao was still better. Do you want to go? Lan Ching asked. To the exit. Exit. Su Hao was confused. There were also countless forks underground, like a maze. His map wasn't very useful either. Butterfly's perception detection was only limited to life forms and items that contained energy. He had been wandering around for a long time. If he kept on like this for a few more days, he would probably be listed as one of the missing people by the exploration team. Lan Ching pointed at the road closest to the sculpture and said, The wind told me that there's an exit in this direction. Su Hao was rendered speechless. As an ordinary college student, he despised those who used special methods to cheat. The underground space was much wider and more complicated than he had imagined. After walking for a while, a fork appeared, and then another fork appeared. He couldn't help but wonder if there was a need to build such a complicated place for nurturing talent. The layout made it seem more like a human defense facility. That seems possible too. He thought about it and almost got a fright when he saw Lan Ching, who was walking with a fluttering gait, suddenly turn around. I was thinking, since the ancient civilization has expanded so much, could it be that they were building defensive facilities? At that time, the ancient city civilization might have faced some kind of danger. But he had doubts. Were the inhabitants of the ancient civilization intruders or natives? Or were they similar to the inhabitants of planet Aquamarine? It didn't seem like they had encountered a major crisis. After all, apart from the fact that the ancient city had become a little more dilapidated with the passage of time, the barrier was intact, and it didn't look like it had been attacked. They couldn't find any corpses that were left behind either. When Lan Ching heard this, a contemplative look appeared on her face, and then Su Hao was still waiting for her to express her thoughts, but she never said anything. Was this how cheaters always acted? Buzz buzz. The wristband vibrated and Su Hao opened it. It was actually a picture. It was a panda with a tilted head and a hand supporting its chin. There was a line of black text "I agree" underneath. Su Hao was stunned for a moment before realizing that it was an emoticon from Lan Ching. Yes, it was true that they could use wristbands to communicate, but couldn't she have said that to him in person since they weren't that far away from each other? Buzz buzz. Lan Ching, but why did they just disappear? Lan Ching, what do you think? JPG. Su Hao looked up and glanced at Lan Ching, who was still walking. She walked casually, as if there was nothing wrong. He opened the wristband and replied, "Look with your eyes, girl." Lan Ching, can't think, so here's a big white dog. JPG. Su Hao was rendered speechless. That dog looked a little familiar. Could it be that she had made her own emoticons? Why was she so different from the rumors? Where was the Dragon City genius girl Su Hao had heard about? The way she talked, oh, never mind, she didn't even talk. As the two attacked each other with emoticons, Lan Ching suddenly said, "We're here." She spoke in a faint voice, almost scaring him out of his wits again. Lan Ching had already come to a stop. Su Hao took a few steps forward, stood beside her and looked out. Beyond the end was actually an underground town. A small town under the ancient city. Su Hao saw several stone monolith-shaped buildings. They were slightly smaller and shorter than the ones on top, but circles of light spread on several of the stone monolith buildings. These circles of light were functioning barriers that served as an illumination source for the underground town. Boom! A ball of dazzling fire exploded. At the center of the town, the halo outside a certain stone monument building shook and seemed to have faded a bit. Thanks to illumination from the flames of the explosion, Su Hao was able to see a figure and a sprite there. The figure stood on the top floor of a building with his hands behind his back. It was a man with a very eye-catching hooked nose. Flying beside the man was an especially large bursting flame bat. It opened its mouth and spat out scorching fireballs. That bursting flame bat looks strong. It's best that we don't go over. The reason he said this was because the contractor of the bursting flame bat had a Japanese name. I know him. When Su Hao heard what Lan Ching said, he didn't continue. The corners of his mouth twitched. As expected. Buzz buzz. Lan Ching, he's the head of the Matsumoto family, a heavenly king. He's very dangerous. Lan Ching, stay passive. JPG. It was written as calligraphy with capitalized letters. Su Hao had gotten the message. He replied, "Smart." JPG. He indeed couldn't afford to offend that person. The bursting flame bat had pseudo-monarch rank strength. If it was supported by the Heavenly King domain, it could even fight wild monarch ranks. Of course, he wasn't scared either. How could words like fear be the same as being passive or steady? Can you find the exit leading outside? Lan Ching shook her head and replied with the area is too big. Then what are your plans? Su Hao asked again. Let's look around. Well, then let's split up and look for exits and treasures. If there's any news and we can't contact each other, we'll return here and make a mark. All right. After saying that, Lan Ching jumped down from the passage. She really did jump. Without riding the big white dog, her whole body floated down to the ground as she disappeared into the darkness. Su Hao glanced at the wind giant spirit that she had abandoned. After thinking about it for 0.2 seconds, he decided to leave Big Fat Bear behind to accompany it. Big Fat Bear, don't abandon Bear sob. But Su Hao had already flown down on the dumb unicorn. After arriving at the underground town, the number of precious materials on the interface map increased immediately. But after he made a comparison, it was mainly still concentrated near the stone monuments shrouded by lit halo barriers. No wonder that Heavenly King Song wanted to blast open the barrier. So it's where the treasure vault is. But unlike him, Su Hao wasn't able to blast it open. He wondered if Senior Wu was also in this town. Su Hao urged his horse, and ran carefully. Occasionally, Su Hao would also provoke wild ghost element sprites, but before they could even attack, they would be KO'd by Butterfly's psychic piercing. As he attentively traveled, Su Hao searched for items according to the scattered treasure icons. Some of the treasure he found were sealed inside storage facilities, but the energy contained in them had already dissipated a little. Only ghost element materials remained fully intact. Shadow energy tended to linger. Speaking of which, the shadow energy seems to be very rich in this town. But Su Hao didn't have a ghost element sprite, so he couldn't sense the shadow elements clearly. As he searched along the way, he saw many valuable materials scattered here and there. However, the documents he wanted most, or rather the documents the Dragon Nation desired most, was nowhere to be found. The books were all gone and the profound symbols were no longer seen. As time went on, the number of scattered icons was decreasing. Suddenly, a unique and almost overlooked icon appeared on the map. Why is this icon pure black? He opened it directly, and a brief message appeared on the interface. Black stone contains a sprite that is being bred. Breeding progress 99.99999%. Black stone that breeds mysterious sprites. Was it an earth element sprite? Or was it a ghost element sprite? The stone itself was earth element. Sprites born from mountains, rocks, and earth were all earth element. But this was Ghost City, thus it was more likely for it to be a ghost element sprite. Besides, sprites never formed icons in the past. Su Hao's interest was piqued. After finding out that the location of the black stone was not in the center of the town, he headed there in peace. At this moment, rumbling sounds still came from the center of the town. He looked over occasionally. The halo of the stone tablet had dimmed a lot. There are indeed a lot of precious materials there. I wonder if there are any other sprite trainers in the town apart from me, Lan Ching, and that person. The location of the black stone was on the left side of the town. If the whole town was divided into 4 rings, then the first and second rings would be the core area, and the fourth ring would be the periphery. As for the black stone, it was in an ordinary position in the west third ring. But after searching around, Su Hao couldn't find a second black stone in the map, nor any other icons for sprites. We're here. Su Hao arrived at an ordinary stone tablet-shaped building. The door was wide open, and it looked very chaotic inside. He picked up many black rocks, but after observing them for a long time, he discovered that they were just ordinary rocks. So where's my black stone? He compared it and confirmed that his position had already overlapped with the black stone icon. But after searching all 3 floors of the building, he still didn't find anything. Is it above, or underground? It shouldn't be on the ground. Although the interface map is 2-dimensional, it also indicated that the stone isn't on the uppermost level but on the same level I'm on. In other words, the black stone should be hidden under the ground level of the underground town? But it shouldn't be very deep. In the building, Butterfly and the others were also busy searching everywhere. Dazed Crow had already slashed through a lot of things while Dumb Unicorn tried to cover as much ground by stepping on the walls and the ground. Fufwis fufwis. The bright night spirit looked left and right. It was still inexperienced so it didn't know what to do. Gurgle. At this moment, Su Hao looked at the wall that Butterfly was pointing at. Just now, the 2 illusionary butterflies that Butterfly released had pierced through the wall and discovered that it was hollow inside. Another secret room. Su Hao looked at Dazed Crow. Squawk! A feather blade with a power output of 10% slashed down and hit the wall. It actually made a clang sound of metal colliding. Just now, Dazed Crow was able to cut open the items effortlessly like cutting tofu. There's indeed something wrong with this wall. The dumb crow increased its damage output. Finally. Boom! The flaming blade blasted a hole in the wall. Su Hao's gaze swept across the few sprites. Well, Big Fat Bear wasn't here, so I'll leave the scouting mission to you, he said, giving Dumb Unicorn a I have faith in you look. 3 minutes later, in the secret underground room. I still can't find the black stone. This place was very spacious and empty, taking up at least 10 times the area of the buildings above. The arrangements were also very solemn. The stone sculptures here were carved so vividly and lifelike. Su Hao even saw a sculpture with a protective halo around it. Apart from the sprite sculpture with a crown in the center, there was a palm-sized crystal in front of each of the other sprite sculptures. He suspected that the inheritance information of sprites was stored in those crystals. But there was no evidence that suggested this. The crystals seemed to have already exhausted their energy. The barrier halo protecting the stone sculpture also looks very dim, as if it would break with just a poke. He came to a black stone slab. It was placed diagonally on a stone table the size of a 4-person dining table. Butterfly said that there was weak energy contained on the stone slab. Su Hao reached out and touched it. Instantly, profound symbols appeared on the stone slab one after another. Years ago, we discovered this world. This world contains special. It can awaken all things and make them into spirits. We call this place the Spirit Summoning World. I see, the Spirit Summoning World is actually. We have to protect ourselves. Today, the Parliament finally agreed to the Ghostly Gate plan. As long as it can reproduce the graceful bearing of that sprite, no matter what the price is. There's no time, no time. The symbols stopped abruptly. The energy contained in the black stone slab was completely exhausted. With a crack, it actually broke into two along with the stone platform. Bang! The stone slab and stone platform fell on both sides, revealing the inside of another small stone platform. On the stone platform was a black stone surrounded by shadow energy. From time to time, wisps of black smoke would appear from the void and directly enter the black stone. During the whole process, the barrier halo surrounding the black stone did not fluctuate at all. It's that mysterious black stone. Su Hao reached out. Buzz! His whole hand bounced back, and he fell down on his butt. The protective screen flashed and disappeared. Phew phew! The bright night spirit called out weakly. It seemed worried. Su Hao petted its head. It's all right. Smash this barrier. Before he finished speaking, Butterfly was already scattering its energy. Like suicide bombers, illusion butterflies crashed themselves right onto the barrier, carrying with them Butterfly's anger. With every illusionary butterfly that disappeared, the halo of the barrier dimmed a little. Finally, crack! The whole halo of the barrier completely dimmed, cracked into countless fragments and dissipated. The mysterious black stone was exposed in the air. Instantly, the shadow energy in the whole secret room seemed to be dozens of times richer. A cold wind blew. Should I take black stone away directly, or? Su Hao looked at the interface. The breeding progress was still 99.99999%. He couldn't figure out whether that mysterious sprite was about to be born, or whether he would have to wait a few more months or years. Or perhaps, he needed to fulfill a certain condition. He tried several methods, but there was no response. After thinking for a while, Su Hao pierced his finger, and a dark red bead of blood dropped onto the mysterious black stone. Chapter 283, Extraordinary Since Birth, Ghost King arrives. With no other ideas, Su Hao decided to initiate a blood contract. As a handsome young man from the new era who had read 3,000 novels and knew how to criticize despite not knowing how to write, Su Hao was confident that a blood contract was the best solution to the problem he faced. All right, maybe it was wishful thinking. Even though Su Hao was nervous, his eyes still stared unblinkingly at the dark red blood droplet. It fell from his fingers, passed through the countless black smoke lingering around the mysterious black stone, and landed on the black stone about the size of a shoe. No response. At that moment, he was a little disappointed. Puff! The surrounding yin winds were suddenly all absorbed. A halo circulated on the mysterious black stone, and an invisible aura appeared, gradually rising. Ding! There was an intelligence points prompt as well as something else. Su Hao quickly opened the interface. The breeding progress of 99.99999% just now had already been displayed 100%. A sprite that was still, was being born. He didn't feel the contractual connection between him and the new sprite, but on the interface, behind the information boxes of Butterfly and the other four, a blank square appeared intermittently. He gritted his teeth and pierced his finger with the blood collection device again, squeezing out a few more drops of blood onto the black stone. The blood droplet was absorbed, but the blank square frame on the interface didn't change much. It still flashed and flashed. Su Hao held his breath and stared unblinkingly. Countless shadows appeared in the air around the black stone. He understood now that the stone platform under the mysterious black stone was also a treasure. It was just that the icon was blocked by the black stone. The black stone used the stone platform to absorb energy from all directions. Su Hao couldn't judge whether this range was a few hundred meters around, the whole underground town, or more than half of Ghost City. He only knew that the shadow energy that appeared in the void had already turned into a sticky substance, wrapping around the rock like a huge black cocoon. As it was extracted from the void, there wasn't much commotion when the energy was absorbed, but the rising aura became more and more obvious, already shaking the air and making buzzing sounds. Fortunately, it's underground. There's also a thin barrier on the wall of the secret chamber. He saw that under the influence of the invisible aura, the light-faced bright night spirit had started to call out weakly, clearly a little uncomfortable. Even the elite-level little Huiya felt uncomfortable. Just how strong was the sprite birthed by the black stone? It was a little out of line with the basic sprite law. As a human, his perception was just slightly inferior, so Su Hao didn't feel anything for the time being. However, he still got Dumb Unicorn to set up water curtains, forming a barrier that enveloped the few sprites. Strong winds swept through the secret room, thick black smoke scattered everywhere, and outside the water screen was darkness. Thud, thud, thud. Finally, the blinking of the interface information box gradually stopped. In the depths of his soul, the connection of the contract suddenly took shape. He felt a completely new but powerful creature appear. Woo! 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 The black cocoon formed by the surrounding black smoke and dense shadow energy was suddenly sucked in. The secret room suddenly became empty, and a slightly familiar-looking sprite floated above the black stone. It had a crown on its head, black, brown, and its robe with many gems embedded in it fluttered. It had no feet, only its hands sticking out from under its wide sleeves. Its eyes were bright and full of spirit, making people feel intimidated just by looking at it. A dignified and terrifying aura spread, making the expressions of the few sprites solemn. At this moment, crack! Countless cracks spread on the mysterious black stone, instantly splitting into 4 to 5 pieces. The stone platform below also seemed to be unable to withstand the surging energy and exploded together. Su Hao's heart ached a little, but he still opened the interface to check. Sprite, Yama Ghost King, changeable name. Attributes, Ghost. Level, Early Extraordinary. Characteristics, Lord of Shadows. Click to expand. Unique skill, Energy Ball, Ghost Claw, Overlapping Shadows, Shadow Wind, Shadow Travel, Eye of Nightmare, Touch of Shadow. Profound, None. Talent Ability 1. Ghost Sprite Commandeering. Click to expand. Unlock the first stage of cultivation with 10 intelligence points. 2. Gan Kun in the Shadow. Click to expand. Unlock the first stage of cultivation with 12 intelligence points. 3. Shadow Elemental Control LV1. Cultivation Plan, omitted. Special Cultivation, none plus. Evolutionary Pathway. Yama Ghost King, Final Form, Pitch Black, Unsatisfied. Unlock Conditions. This attribute. This interface. Seriously. What the f***ck? The interface of Yama Ghost King wasn't very grand. It didn't have many unique skills, profound meanings, and special cultivation. But, its starting point was so high. It was already extraordinary level since birth, and it only had one form? Perhaps it's because its incubation period is very long, and it absorbed a large amount of energy during this process. Su Hao could only guess this way. What made him pay more attention was his talent. What was talent? It was either innate, obtained through a fortuitous encounter, or an elemental control that only extraordinary level people could master. It was something that couldn't be obtained through cultivation alone. From a talent ability, many tactics, unique skills, and even secret manuals could be extended. Su Hao's team only had Butterfly and Dumb Unicorn with special talents. Butterfly's illusionary changes was obtained from the Mirage Dragon ruins after it was born. The secret manual Illusionary Butterfly was created by fusing illusion with illusionary transformations. Dumb Unicorn's Mist Cloud was considered to be semi-innate. It was a talent brought about by the activation of the bloodline. At the moment, Su Hao had yet to have the time to cultivate the corresponding tactical system, but it was also very impressive. Despite having a luxurious interface, the rich second-generation heir Big Fat Bear didn't have any special talent. The Yama Ghost King had cheated since birth. It was simply as scary as a ghost. Yama. Yan, I'll call you that from now on. After all, the words Yama Ghost King are just too long. The words Ghost King were too domineering. How can a nickname be so domineering? Well, it felt more intimate to call it Yan. It could bring Yama Ghost King the warmth of home. It had just been born. On the surface, it looked dignified and imposing, and was an authentic Yama Ghost King. There was nothing to complain about. It was very quiet as it listened carefully to Su Hao, a dependent and familiar human who was giving it life lessons. It was also learning the control of power. After accidentally contracting a sprite with full potential and extraordinary battle power, Su Hao didn't even have the mood to look for treasures anymore. He stayed in the secret room and played the Sprite Enlightenment cartoon on his wristband. It didn't seem odd for Su Hao to have these, but he kept them just to be safe. After all, it did prove to be useful at that moment. Yan floated in the air as its clothes fluttered despite the lack of wind. Its eyes stared straight at the projection on the wall. It looked very serious, and the expression on its face was filled with yearning for the beautiful world outside. While it was learning, Su Hao also gave it a checkup. He got some data that wasn't displayed on the interface. For example, the Yama Ghost King was different from the Nightmare Terror. It had a physical body, and the clothes on its body felt like silk. What was even more surprising was that there wasn't a physical body inside the robe. The whole Yama Ghost King was made up of a head, a pair of hands, and a robe. So technically, the clothes were its main body. After a few hours of enlightenment, Yan pretty much understood how to use his own power. Su Hao ordered, "Try out your Gankun in the shadow ability." The explanation given by the interface for this ability was that it could use shadows to store items. But Su Hao still had to see it for himself. Data from all aspects also needed detailed testing. Who? Yan nodded. When it spoke, it was as if a cold wind was blowing. It's hard to provide an accurate description of its voice. But as a contracted sprite, it had no problem with communicating. With a wave of its robe, a few cracked pieces of rock disappeared immediately. With another wave, it appeared again. I finally have a storage ring after being a sprite trainer for 2 years. And it's not just regular storage. According to the interface, Yan could even store a whole person. In addition to this ability, it can also use the unique skill Shadow Traverse to escape quickly. It's definitely a first-class life-saving skill. The moment Su Hao said that, Dumb Unicorn acted as if it had been electrocuted. It stretched its head out and looked over, its face filled with nervousness. Was it afraid that it would lose its position as Su Hao's mount? Hoo. It seems Yan's shadow traverse can only last for a short while. Gan Kun in the shadow also can't maintain the storage state indefinitely. But that can be changed through cultivation. Dumb Unicorn relaxed after hearing Su Hao's words. The whole Kylan laid on the ground and let out a long breath as white mist traveled out from its mouth. When Yan saw this, it sucked it up with a slurp and received the cold and comfortable contents. Dumb Unicorn's cold breath tasted good to ghost element sprites. Su Hao shook his head and said to Yama Ghost King, "Show me your next unique skill." Chapter 284, As long as my horse is fast enough, even a heavenly king won't be able to catch me. Boom! Boom! In the underground town, explosions came one after another. The dazzling flames appeared from time to time. The halo on a stone monument building had already disappeared. On the top floor of a building, the hooked-nosed man held a large backpack in his hand. With a vigorous leap, he flew more than 10 meters and landed on another stone building. How could this grand and ancient city ruin only contain so few precious materials? Or are the treasures in front of us all just a cover? Could there be other hidden treasures? He snorted. I'll find out when I've looted all the places. At least with what I have right now, it's enough for my Matsumoto family to nurture 1 or 2 master-level sprite trainers. But if I can find the real treasure vault, like the one where all the stage rewards are stored, then our Matsumoto family will truly rise. At this moment, the halo of the stone monument building in front had completely disappeared. Under the bombardment of the bursting flame bat's fireballs, an opening was immediately blasted open, and precious light shot out from the opening. Seeing this, the hooked-nosed man's gaze became much more intense. The light was much brighter than the 2 treasure vaults he had broken through previously. Suddenly, a huge earthy yellow energy ball shot out from behind a building and directly hit the treasury building, causing the whole stone tablet to collapse. Some precious materials stored in the light ball barrier could be seen flying in all directions. A swift brown figure suddenly flashed across the sky and reached out to grab the storage balls. Idiot! The mighty-looking bursting flame bat suddenly flew out, its bat wings like blades passing through a long line of fire in the air. Boom! The brown figure, which had yet to land on the ground, was suddenly sent flying. It smashed through 2 stone monolith buildings with a rumble, and some of the storage balls scattered and landed on the ground. Heavenly King Matsumoto rode a hell warhorse and arrived in front of the damaged treasure vault. He opened his palm and withdrew his domain power. Those storage balls flew up lightly and landed in his big backpack. It was 1/10 full. Why are there so few? The glow of the treasures are clearly very bright. He continued to search, but the treasury was empty. Apart from some precious materials that had just been scattered, there was nothing else. Idiot! In the spacious secret room, Yama Ghost King emerged from a certain wall and floated around in mid-air. You're back. It was different from Butterfly. It couldn't turn a physical body into an illusion, but when using the unique skill Shadow Travel, it could easily escape into the shadows. It was very fast. Su Hao took out his cell phone and checked the time. The time Yan took to make a round trip to the town and back was, and the distance between the 2 ends of the town was approximately. From this, one could calculate the approximate speed of Yan's shadow travel. He felt that Yan was a little excited. Did it get high from running? But you're not dumb unicorn. Hoo. You mean you picked up some treasures? Hoo. Yan's robe shook, and storage balls fell out noisily. Strands of light escaped from the high-level materials, illuminating the whole secret room. And this was all picked up? The treasures picked up could pile up into a mountain? You didn't pick these under the nose of a certain hooked nose, did you? Cough, cough. Oh, you mean if it was on the ground and was left alone then it was fine to pick them up? I guess you're right. Boom. Boom. The secret room suddenly shook, and dust rustled down, scaring Su Hao so much that he thought that Ayan had been discovered for picking up the treasure. But when he sensed carefully, the shaking didn't come from above the secret room, but the whole underground was shaking. He quickly went outside, and Butterfly and the others emerged from the stone tablet building. He saw. Boom! A loud boom came from afar. The whole town was shaking, and many primordial ghost element sprites flew out, crying and falling into panic. The explosion came from the ground. What exactly happened up there? Su Hao hadn't even found the exit. At this moment, there was another violent quake. A few old stone monolith buildings collapsed from the quake, and rocks fell from the sky of the town. Finally, he saw a few huge rocks crashing down, and bright light beams were projected in from the outside. In the light beam, dust shadows floated. The sound of the explosion became louder, and the falling rocks became more frequent. The whole underground town looked like it was going to collapse completely. We should leave immediately. Su Hao got on the dumb unicorn, Butterfly laid on top of his head, and the dazed crow circled around. Before long, it rushed out of one of the holes and returned to the ground. Su Hao opened his arms immediately and summoned Big Fat Bear, Bright Night Spirit, and Yama Ghost King, who were still underground. Only then did he realize. Why is it so bright? The environment of Ghost City had always been dark and quiet. Now, apart from the explosions everywhere, the sunlight was also very dazzling, just like the dark clouds that shrouded the sky of Ghost City. Don't tell me the barrier was destroyed. Senior Wu had told him that it wasn't impossible for them to destroy the Ghost City's barrier, but the Union's excavation of the ruins had always been relatively careful. They were just afraid that when destroying the barrier, they would also destroy certain treasures and legacies. But now, Su Hao already had an ominous feeling. The energy around was also very chaotic. He thought about it and immediately rushed towards the direction of the entrance. Suddenly, swish, 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 swish. A series of signal bullets flew up and exploded in the sky, forming a few special red symbols. He knew this alliance signal there were enemies, aliens. What if aliens suddenly appeared during our exploration? Has this ever happened in history? Su Hao had asked Senior Wu this question before. Senior Wu replied, yes, that would be a very critical situation. The only thing we can and must do is delay the enemy until reinforcements arrive. Everything we do should be for the Union, for our families. At that moment, Su Hao could easily hide himself and wait for reinforcements, but Su Hao looked up and saw that in the air, a sprite trainer from the Union was being chased by sprite trainers from an alien tribe. The Union's sprite trainer rode a gargoyle dragon. The people from the tribe were also riding gargoyle dragons. But the appearance was very different. The gargoyle dragon of the tribe had a long tail, its wings were scarlet red, and it let out a sharp roar. Su Hao looked and only hesitated for a moment. **W it. At his command, the dazed crow, which had long been ready for action, flew out like an arrow released from a bow. In the blink of an eye, it caught up to the scarlet gargoyle dragon. Butterfly, which had grabbed onto dazed crow, also casted an illusion without any hesitation. Big Fat Bear also blasted out one lightning cannon to assist. In just an instant, the dazed crow seized its opportunity. A blazing red flaming blade slashed down, and the scarlet gargoyle was blasted down. Thank you. The person who was saved felt a lingering fear in his heart as he hurriedly lowered his flying altitude. At this moment, his pupils constricted. Little squawk. The dazed crow underneath the sun was sent flying with a single strike. Its flames dissipated and its flaming feather gown was ripped apart, and the broken feathers floated in the air. The whole crow was shot to the ground. On the interface, the dazed crow had already suffered moderate injuries. A gargoyle dragon with an especially large body, a ferocious look, and 4 arms appeared in Su Hao's vision. On the gargoyle dragon stood a figure. Dressed in the unique attire of an alien tribe, he looked over. The gargoyle dragon's faint eyes also fell. The next moment, its scarlet wings flapped, turning into a grayish-red shadow that pounced towards him. It was a monarch-rank gargoyle dragon. Su Hao's heart suddenly shrank. Before his brain could react, he watched as the grayish-red shadow grew larger. Boom! The ground caved in, and the gargoyle dragon's thick arm hit the center of the pit, sending rocks flying and dust filling the air. However, he was gone. The tribe Heavenly King frowned and looked somewhere. There, a black shadow was fleeing into the distance at an extremely fast speed. After fleeing for a while, it finally couldn't hold on any longer and ejected its content. People and sprites appeared together from thin air. The four-armed gargoyle dragon roared and spread its wings again. At this moment, the Yama Ghost King, who was still unfamiliar with transporting people, couldn't escape into the shadows a second time. But Su Hao had already returned to his senses. He was riding on the back of the dumb unicorn. Change of plans, run! The dumb unicorn suddenly rushed out. The mist turned into a cloud as it lifted Big Fat Bear and the Bright Night Spirit and flew into the distance. Chapter 285, Shocking, this man actually held back the Heavenly King with his own strength. The thin water screen blocked the whistling wind. On both sides, stone monolith-shaped buildings retreated from Su Hao's sight rapidly, leaving only after images in the corners of his eyes. He heard a deafening roar and looked back. The gargoyle dragon with four thick arms was chasing him very closely. Its body was huge, and it couldn't easily fly past the stone monolith buildings like the dumb unicorn. However, the monarch-rank gargoyle dragon didn't have any intention of going around and flew straight towards the buildings. Sturdy, towering stone monolith buildings were blasted apart like fragile tofu. Countless large and small rocks flew out, hitting other buildings or hitting the ground. A series of booms rang out, but the gargoyle dragon's speed wasn't affected much. The distance between them was closing. Why are you chasing so fiercely? Do you have to go so far? He must be jealous of my handsomeness. Gargoyle dragon. It seemed like that Heavenly King of super ugliness only Su Hao in its sights. Su Hao was also clear that apart from being handsome, his enemies were also jealous of his talent. Among the explorers, he was one of the few with a tender face. The only one younger than him was probably Lan Ching. He was both handsome and talented. His head alone was worth 4 to 7 entire bodies. He was coveted. But looking at it this way, the people from the gargoyle tribe may not be clear about the exact location of the planet Aquamarine entrance, or it may be that Heavenly King of super ugliness doesn't intend to attack the entrance. It was understandable. If the gargoyle tribe breached the entrance to planet Aquamarine, should they also step into planet Aquamarine? The Union was worried that the alien tribe would cause a large amount of destruction on planet Aquamarine and was afraid that the people there would be plunged into misery and suffering. However, the Heavenly Kings of the tribe were also worried that they would die if they went deep into the enemy area. Even if they were to fight around the entrance, they would also have to worry about the possible dangers. Who knows when a bald when a crown-level sprite would show up and beat them to pulp. The Heavenly King from the alien tribe was also human. It was normal for him to choose a method with high benefits and low risk. In that case, it's even more impossible for me to lure Heavenly King of super ugliness towards the entrance. Dumb Unicorn took out the results of hundreds of days of special training and ran for its life. The cloud formed by special talents under its hooves maintained the same speed as the Dumb Unicorn's sprinting. It didn't slow down much just because it was supporting Big Fat Bear and Bright Night Spirit. At most, it was a little lacking in endurance. Dumb Unicorn was a long-distance runner to begin with. Even if it lost half of its endurance, it wouldn't get tired. It would get only high once it started running. Even Yama Ghost King couldn't catch up to it without using shadow travel. However, the ferocious four-armed gargoyle dragon was still close on their tail. A yellow light beam shot out of its mouth, brushing past Dumb Unicorn's cloud and flying over, hitting the buildings in front. Giant rocks rumbled and fell, blocking the escape route. Of course, Dumb Unicorn wasn't afraid of these huge rocks, but it couldn't avoid being obstructed. At this moment, it was less than 100 meters away from the monarch rank gargoyle dragon. If it got any closer, there would be a gravitational field that could squeeze through the air and envelop it. Su Hao's mind raced, and he was able to determine how the situation would unfold in an instant. Change plans again, Ayan, shadow travel. After calming down for a while, the Yama Ghost Lord rolled up its robe, and the few sprites disappeared. It integrated into the shadows and flew away at maximum speed, appearing hundreds of meters away in the blink of an eye, passing through the rocky area. Then, with a shake of its robe, it spat out all the sprites. Dumb Unicorn's four hooves landed on the ground, and immediately connected seamlessly. With a neigh, it continued to run forward. The distance between him and that heavenly king of super ugliness finally widened a little. Su Hao took a breath and glanced at the interface. At this point, Butterfly was fine but Dazed Crow was still suffering from moderate injuries, so Su Hao didn't summon them back. That would only increase the burden of Yama Ghost King. If all I had was Dazed Crow, then I would be worried. But with Butterfly around, there won't be any problems. Butterfly is well versed in tactics such as hiding, being steady, and keeping us alive. While there was still a signal from the contract, Su Hao gave Butterfly the command to kill a few more people without taking any risks. Su Hao, on the other hand, focused on dealing with the pursuers behind him. He's a heavenly king. That's not someone I should be fighting at my age. At this moment, roar! A circle of light blossomed around the body of the four-armed gargoyle dragon, and its flying speed suddenly increased. The stone monolith buildings were smashed into pieces, and the falling rock debris actually stopped mid-air. It then shot towards Su Hao like hidden weapons. Fire, intercept! He ordered. Big Fat Bear stood up from the cloud, rubbed its palms together, and shot out lightning cannonballs towards its palms, shattering the huge black rocks with a bang. It then wrapped its arms around itself and suddenly pushed out a huge lightning ball with a diameter of 1 meter. The ball of lightning directly crushed many flying rocks, hitting the charging four-armed gargoyle dragon. Suddenly, it exploded, and countless thunder arcs covered the gargoyle dragon's huge body. However, the thunder arcs were quickly erased by the brownish-yellow halo around it. What the f***ck? Monarch rank is indeed too fierce. Big Fat Bear's attack had only scratched its itch. After all, Big Fat Bear wasn't very good at long-range attacks. Bright Night Spirit, on the other hand, was too weak. Yama Ghost King had just been born, and the power of its unique skill was still inferior to the Big Fat Bear. Hoo-hoo! Suddenly, amidst the rumbling of explosions, Yama Ghost King's low cry rang out. In the surroundings, the panicked and scattered wild ghost element sprites flying everywhere heard the cry. One by one, the ghosts turned their heads to look at the ferocious gargoyle dragon. The temperature seemed to have dropped several degrees. Many elite-level nightmare terrors, guhuo birds, and cabinet university scholars either leaped forward directly or used their special skills to attack the huge figure. Ghost sprite commandeering was not an illusion technique, but an order. It was an order that was able to make ghost element sprites obey from the bottom of their hearts. At the command of the king, hundreds of ghosts came. The densely packed black beams and shadow energy balls blasted over. Some missed, but most hit the huge gargoyle dragon as it didn't dodge. Dozens of unique skills of the same source were gathered, one or two of which were even unique skills used by extraordinary-level ghost element sprites. Under the resonance, even the yellowish-brown halo on the gargoyle dragon's body darkened, forcing it to let out a furious roar. Roar! Some ghost element sprites nearby were immediately stunned unconscious. Those slightly further away trembled. Their screams were sharp and fearful. They turned their heads, and scattered with a boom. Su Hao was rendered speechless. Unreliable, Unreliable. He saw that Heavenly King of Super Ugliness was disturbed by the wild ghost for a while. Not only did he not seem angry, but his eyes raged even more. He is so ugly, yet he's still staring at me. It makes me very uncomfortable. This chase and escape lasted for 2 more minutes. Su Hao had narrowly escaped death several times, and with Yama Ghost King's shadow traverse, he managed to survive a few more waves. But each time, the traveling time shortened, and the cooldown intervals were also longer. A look of victory seemed to appear on the face of Heavenly King of Super Ugliness. In particular, at this point, Dumb Unicorn had already rushed out of Ghost City. Without any buildings to stop it, the gargoyle dragon flew even faster. With a flap of its wings, it raised a gale and sandstorm that filled the sky. Suddenly, amidst the strong wind and sand, an azure water trail gradually became clearer. Insignificant water droplets floated on the waterway, and shot towards the huge grayish-red body. Bit by bit, the distance between the two showed signs of widening. If the enemy was slower, it meant that I was going faster. Dumb Unicorn continued to flee. With the construction of the Dumb Unicorn's water path, the Yama Ghost King's ability as a transport had also improved. Its shortening travel time and longer cooldowns were only temporary. Let's reduce our speed and give the enemy some hope. Otherwise, there was no guarantee that the Heavenly King of Super Ugliness wouldn't give up on us and instead chase after the others. Su Hao also had to worry about problems that he shouldn't be worrying about at his age. It really wasn't easy for him. On the endless brown earth, the cloud flew in front, and the grayish-red figure chased from behind. From time to time, it would blast out light pillars or roar. On the left, in the ghost city that could be seen from afar, flames soared into the sky, smoke and dust filled the air, buildings collapsed one after another. The whole ghost city was gradually being turned to ruins in the war that had broken out. The Dumb Unicorn didn't fly in a straight line, but passed through the hills and moved around Ghost City, to prevent getting lost while fleeing. Suddenly, the ferocious four-armed gargoyle dragon stopped. "You're not chasing anymore." Su Hao had the intention of getting it to keep chasing, but he didn't want to overdo it. His survival was more important. Alas, he could only watch the gargoyle dragon fly towards Ghost City. At this moment, in the northeast direction of Ghost City, the sky suddenly changed color, and a huge monster appeared. Its body was at least dozens of meters long and had jade-like bones. It looked like a dragon or a centipede as it soared in the sky. Everywhere it passed, the weather changed and thunder rolled. It was a jade-bone dragon. Behind that dragon was a sky-encompassing gargoyle dragon. There were 2 gargoyle dragons. The army of the tribe had arrived. That jade-bone dragon is a crown sprite. How can a gargoyle tribe like yours have a sprite like the jade-bone dragon, let alone using it as your main force? Su Hao started to really panic. What if they broke through the entrance? No, as long as the entrance to planet Aquamarine was sealed off from the alien tribe, then he would be able to return home and write a book on the adventure of the sprite summoning continent. Su Hao gritted his teeth and made the Dumb Unicorn make a half-circle before flying towards the planet Aquamarine entrance. Halfway through the flight, a resplendent 7-colored light blossomed at the planet Aquamarine entrance, piercing through most of the sky like a rainbow. The reinforcements from the Union had finally arrived in time.